Hi, I'm here with Ashley Martin, and she's going to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Ashley Martin, and I've been a teacher for 11 years now, and I've taught 4th grade and 3rd grade, and I'm currently at Springside Elementary in Saratoga Springs.
What grade are you focusing in this year?
4th grade.
Okay. I want to talk to you about how things have been changed with your team since participating in that program. What benefits has your team experienced through Read a Difference?
There's been a lot of changes. I think the biggest change was our attitude toward reading. I think we stopped looking at it as something we had to do and something we had to assess, and we looked at it more as, okay, how do we really empower students through reading, and how do we empower them to love reading? And the whole mind shift just changed because it wasn't anymore about test scores, and it wasn't about, their reading levels. It was about, do our kids actually like to read?
So what were some of the things that you decided as a team you could do to address reading motivation for your students?
I think one of the first things that we really did was change the way we thought about rewarding reading. And that was kind of a big shift for me. We really focused on making sure that the reward for reading is more reading, and it wasn't coupons, or it wasn't prize box things, or getting to go to Friday Fun. It was, we read because we love it, and the more we read, the more we get to read. And that was a big change, I think, for a lot of us. Another thing that we did is it unified us as a team. As we worked on those 7 practices we learned through the program, we were able to have common conversations about very specific techniques and strategies we used in the classroom. That really made it so that we had a common place to come to talk about, and we had the ability to, really dive deep into some of these practices and have a really strong focus.
I love that you talked about how you were able to look into those 7 practices, and I'm really interested to know more. The UVU faculty came and supported you with this program and this grant and provided some education on those 7 practices. Did you feel like there was a lot of things that you didn't know? Did you already know some of it? Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, so a lot of it inherently you kind of know. It's common sense. Of course that, that would breed, motivation for students, but I think we get so bogged down with curriculum and standards and test scores and our students on level and what is guided reading supposed to look like, what is our program for reading supposed to look like. And so as they brought those, it made me excited to teach reading again, and it really opened up, oh my goodness, I can still use the tools that I've been given, and I can still use test scores to inform me about students, but that's not my focus. And it was about really teaching kids to love to read.
So what did that look like when it came to planning instruction and some of the things that you incorporated that were day-to-day? I mean, easy, small things that you felt like, if I do this, it's just going to do a little bit more for reading motivation. Can you tell me about some of those little things you were doing?
Yeah, one of the first things that I did was how I approached reading and the purpose of reading. The purpose of reading stopped being so we could practice this skill or so that we could, practice this strategy, but it was more, we're going to read today for authenticity, and we're going to read because we want to learn more about this, or I just read this really great book and I want to share it with you. And so really when we approached a book or a text, how I approached it changed. Also, one of the biggest things is I realized my kids needed to talk more about what they're reading. And so I embedded time in our day that kids could actually go in and they could talk to each other and they could sign up to share with each other their books. And they had bins that they could place their books in that they've read and that they recommended, and they could write a little something about it and share with each other. And so that was a big shift for me. Instead of book sharing because it was something I was supposed to do, the kids got really excited because they really read what their friends read. And so that was a big shift as well. Another thing was the way I rewarded reading. And every day, if a kid finished a book or something, I would fish for something else for them to read, whether it was the second book in the series, or you liked this author also wrote this. And so getting them excited about reading because they finished something by reading more instead of prize boxes or things like that.
I love that perspective and that connection to that proximate reward, and how we really want to reward students with the task of reading or something that connects so closely to reading, to really focus in on, this is what you just accomplished. And some of those strategies and things that you did are so easy. It doesn't have to be like a big activity or anything. It was just helping them find the next book in the series or another author that's similar. And that's such an easy thing that teachers can do. Another thing you mentioned was just making that authentic connection with the students about books. Did you feel like there was a change for your students in that, in your classroom dynamics with reading? Can you describe kind of what you saw in previous years and the year that you did the program, if there was any change in behaviors towards reading?
Yeah, if I approached a book differently, if I said, you know what, I found this really cool book on something we've been talking about, let's dive into it. They had no idea that day that we were going to talk about main idea in detail. They had no idea that that was kind of the standard behind my purpose. But as I approached it, I saw their little ears perk up and they leaned forward, and you could see that they were more engaged. Whereas before it was, kind of like, okay, it's something they had to endure. And it was just their facial expressions kind of changed. And I also felt myself being able to give something to my students and let them run with it, instead of me feeling like I had to drive that lesson the entire way.
Do you feel like you've seen a big enough change that you could look back at the year you did the program and years that you haven't and say, wow, this really affected my classroom, my teaching, my instruction, compared to the years before?
Yeah, at first it felt like a lot more prep, when I was doing the program, that I really had to sit down and be purposeful about what I was doing. And yet, as I started implementing things, I realized a lot of things became easier because it was put in the students' hands, as far as doing their reading homework or doing assignments in class that required reading. It was a whole attitude change, whereas in the past I may not have had as much prep up front because I had a lesson here in a book that I followed, and yet during the lessons it was really hard to get them sometimes through them and to keep motivated all the way through and to keep that energy and enthusiasm up.
So you feel like this just engaged the students more in a natural way, and you just felt like they were more actively involved in reading.
Yeah, and it was engagement that they chose to give me. I didn't have to pull it out of them. It was just the way I kind of approached it.
I love that. I know your school had a very unique activity for one of the proximate rewards. Can you talk to us about what led up to this activity and a lot of what you feel like the students gained from that?
Yeah, so we chose to do Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So we started out by reading the book as a class, as kind of a read aloud. And the kids really enjoyed it. And they didn't know that we had this, kind of plan all along. But we read it in our individual classrooms kind of the month before. And then we decided to have a reading challenge with the whole grade. And that their reward was to have this Willy Wonka event where we brought the book to life. And so what we did is we devised a reading challenge that tried to implement a lot of the practices that we had learned. So they got a lot of choice in the books they got to read for the practice. They had a choice in their goals that they set. And we also had a lot of rewards that required them to read more. And the rewards were centered around reading. So we did kind of a March Madness challenge where every week the kids help set goals for themselves of what it would look like to either increase the amount they read or to challenge each other to read more. And so one of the things they did was they set a class goal of how many minutes they think they could get as a class. and they beat it, and it was easy for them and they enjoyed it. And some kids, might have only read the required amount, but they actually read the required amount, whereas before, I don't know if they really did, and all the time for their reading. And so each week, if they met their goal, and we said it was okay if they didn't meet their goal as well, but they did. And so as they met their goal, we had some kind of fun reward, reading with the first graders or getting a book as a prize, things like that.
So little checkpoints, kind of.
And so we did it for 4 weeks. And if they were able to meet their goals and participate for the 4 weeks in the challenge, they got to, at the end, participate in our Willy Wonka event.
That is incredible. And I think, if I remember correctly, this event was in the library and it was decorated, and it just really brought that book to life and helped the students feel like they got to experience what really happened in the story.
Yeah, we took the library and we decorated it to look like the chocolate factory, and we employed the help of parents and our librarian, and they were all so excited about it. It was such a fun opportunity for them to do this for the kids. And so we had different things in the book that we brought to life, whether it was the waterfall or the candy bar that we did, and we were able to watch the movie and compare the book and the movie. So,
do you feel like there are things that you can take away from your experience with Read a Difference that are going to be very sustainable and not just kind of one-time things? Do you feel like there's things that you will continue doing, or you'll implement new things going forward?
Yeah, the first thing that was really powerful, I think, was choice, letting kids have choice, no matter what it is. When they have choice, they are more likely to read and want to read and actually follow through with it. And that was one of the biggest things that I thought I was giving my students choice before, but allowing them to say no to a book or put a book away, or even when we're at guided reading and I have this certain book that if I give them a choice, they actually always did better. And it might have been a choice between this book, or what text do you want to read on the screen or off the screen. But when they had a choice in what they read, that really made a difference. And so that's something that I will always implement and find new ways to give my students choice in the classroom.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your insights and your feedback. We are so grateful that you could participate in this program and experience it with your students. Is there anything else that you want to add, or any last words of advice, or anything like that you'd like to share with the teachers?
Yeah, reading's supposed to be fun, so it's okay to make it fun, and it's okay to not always have that standard in mind. And all that stuff will naturally come, we found. And as you plan and use the principles that we learned that really are sound principles, and got our kids to talk more and collaborate more, things like that, the standards naturally just fell into the reading. And so really making sure that you're focusing on getting a student to love reading and that it's an enjoyable experience, because as adults, that's why we read, and if we think about it that way, we don't read because we have to, we read because we want to. And if we don't want to, we don't do it. And so getting kids to really fall in love with reading really should be the first goal, and everything else will just follow.
I love that new perspective and that focus. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah.